cyber risks, cloud security, data privacy and protection, access governance, risk and compliance. She has carved her way up to become one of the women leaders representing the management council of the organization. Her current work involves planning and developing next-gen managed security platforms offering proactive threat detection, security automation, data-centric security and governance for the new age of digital customers. With this, please welcome Ms. Priya with a huge round of applause.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, thank you. Thank you, especially after lunch. I'll try my best to keep you all awake. That's something I can definitely try. And thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Priya Kanduri. I'm the CTO with 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗄 and a lot of the work that I've done in the last decade specifically is all around data protection, data privacy, data governance, regulations. Most of the work has been around that, and that way this is quite relevant to what I do. Heavy slide, but I just want to focus on few aspects when it's with respect to this slide. Data protection, or what are the key data aspects that an organization would like to protect? It's their employee data, their customer data, IP, anything to do with financials, anything that can potentially cause reputational damage within the market. That's the kind of data that an organization would like to protect, obviously. And it was a much easier task earlier, where all they had to do was, the organizations exactly knew where the data is stored. It's always in a database. I encrypt it, I put column encryptions and put activity monitoring, do a couple of access control checks, and for endpoints I do DLP, and I'm protected. My data cannot leave the organization. This is the ideal good old world, which is not the case anymore. Now we cannot, now there's no way for organizations to specifically say my sensitive data is limited to these stores. This is where my data is, and if I do this and my data is protected. That's not the case. And the possibilities of data leakage, the possibilities of uncontrolled accesses, the possibilities of accidental errors have enormously increased. And the reason happens to be this: everybody, all organizations going digital is one of the key reasons for something, for these errors to happen. Digital transformation is a path to production. Digital transformation is a path to increased returns and revenues, and that cannot be increased customer satisfaction, increased employee productivity. All these are a direct result of digital transformation that can definitely not be stopped or controlled. But then let's have a quick look at what it means for data privacy and data protection, because organizations are investing millions and millions in terms of going digital. But a lot of times that I have come across in my own experience, data privacy doesn't really factor into the digital transformation journey or technology adoption journey. It becomes an aftermath, comes in much later. Some of the key aspects are: first point, data is everywhere. Your customers are everywhere, so data is collected from everywhere. Your employees are everywhere, so data access is given to anywhere and everywhere. That's one of the problems. And another area where I wanted to draw attention is hyper-personalization. Every activity of your consumers is tracked, right from a mouse click to a mouse hovering and websites visited and all the clicks that they've done. Everything is privacy data, and that's all money. So organizations cannot do away with not tracking, storing, processing, analyzing this data. But once again, are we taking enough care in terms of how this data is protected and what it actually means to protect the data? There are many other reasons why, and growing supply chain is a third point that I wanted to. A customer that I personally deal with, they have 16,000 third-party vendors that they deal with. Their supply chain size is 16,000. So these 16,000 vendors and their employees at various levels and capacities have access to their privacy information that ranges from developers to facilities to IT vendors to logistics vendors. All of them have access to their data, their employee data, their customer data at various levels and capacities. So how do we restrict the glowing supply chain areas? These are the key reasons why data privacy is not what it used to be anymore. Ensuring data privacy is not what it used to be anymore because of uncontrolled expansion and the demand to improve productivity, adopt digital transformation at a much faster pace than what organizations and security controls and the security investments were capable to keep pace with. A quick look at what are the key data governance challenges faced by organizations today. It's the result of a survey conducted. Of course, top 3 challenges definitely are data quality, which is again nothing but data governance and it's part of data governance. And knowing the right sources, once again data governance challenge, digital transformation challenge, ensuring data security, once again a result of expansion of data and how do we protect the same. Then we also have issues with identifying the right data, which is nothing but data minimization problem. Once again, an area where not many organizations are focused. We just want to keep accumulating data, you just want to be greedy, gather as much data as possible, not really knowing how much of data you need, for how long do you really need to store. There are some organizations that store data for 30 and 40 years, not really knowing if it's required or not required. So, exactly knowing the right set of data, the right amount of data and right storage of data is one of the significant challenges that many organizations still face. And since morning all of us have been hearing about analytics and AI and how to deliver fast paced business transformations and how to deliver more business insights and how to improve productivity, but all of that goes back to data. And giving enough focus and importance to protecting that data is also a critical challenge, and that cannot, it is not a switch that you turn on and it happens. And in my own experience, I have seen it takes years to get to the right point where you can confidently or with reasonable confidence can say that my data, I know where my data is and it is protected. I don't know how many of us can actually confidently say that today, but all CXOs have to be in a position to be able to say that. I know, at least I know what my risks are and I am working towards it. That at least is a statement that everybody should be able to say with reasonable confidence, and that is what we are going to talk about also. And a couple of key challenges, once again just quickly wanted to mention. Threat landscape, most of the attacks, malwares, ransomwares that we all see today are all nothing but they are all attacks on data. Data is what an organization's key jewel is, and organization's reputation, premise, business, revenues, everything is dependent on the nature of data that they deal with and the nature of data that they service to their customers. And so, if I am talking about, many of you may be aware, there are about 250 million new variants of malware that are released into the market every year, clubbing it with existing variants of malware because they keep resurfacing as well. We are looking at 1 billion malwares per year, and all their focus is either leak your data, get hold of your data, sell it in the dark web channels, or damage the reputation, hold it ransom and take money from organizations, and many organizations have paid millions of dollars of ransomware, which may not be public information, but it does happen a lot. So, that is one of the key threats. And then what is actually happening on the protection side of things, 54% of the organizations still say they are not protecting, they do not get enough budget. And when do they actually get the budget? When there is an attack. 76% of organizations have said that after an attack, now I have budget, I am asked to go and implement whatever it takes. But then in the process there is already a business loss, there are already jobs lost, there are already heads cut, there is already a lot of reputational damage in the market. But then one good aftermath probably is that you do get budgets. Shadow IT is another problem. Recently one of our customers had a huge ransomware attack, and the root cause for that was that a developer created a VM. It was not through IT's approval. They had accesses, they created it on the cloud, and it did not have any OS hardening, it did not have any root access control, it did not have any backdoors closed. It was just left open. They used it for a POC 3 days, forgot to turn it off, forgot to plunge it. And after 6 months or so, somebody could get access to it, through which they got into the production systems, through which they could get hold of the endpoints, and through which they could create a ransomware attack. And the end result is one simple shadow IT problem caused almost 12 days of business interruption and business loss. So, shadow IT still happens to be a significant issue, and that is one of the things to really look for when it comes to data protection. And what is the key information that we see being sold on dark web channels? If you have access, your SOC operators will have access, they can always tell you what is the key data of your organization. that's being sold on dark web or at least being talked about, because every other day I get alert from my IT teams that my credentials are available on dark web. Most of the times they are not right credentials, it's just they can just keep pumping information. Some of the creds that I see, some of the notifications I see is like 12 years old data. But then it could be real also. As whenever I get an alert, I change my password, but there are people always out there who are looking for this information of your data, your employees' data, your customers' data, and looking at ways to get hold of it and sell it in the dark web channels. You can always find out from whoever is doing your security monitoring. They will be able to tell you what about your organization is being talked about in the dark web channels. Once again, all of that goes back to data privacy and data regulation and data governance, and something that needs utmost importance. And this is not new, but just wanted to show how the world is bothered. All the governments are bothered about what's happening with data privacy. It all started with UK and Europe introducing GDPR and EU privacy regulations, and then that is about 5 years ago. Then the rest of the world followed suit. US introduced their own data privacy regulations. Australia introduced their own privacy regulations. These are strictly enforced. Then there are other privacy regulations which are there, but they are a little loosely followed or loosely monitored or enforced. India also has a couple of regulations. We are not so strict about the enforcement, but it's always been a important factor. But sooner or later, at least some organizations, some business domains will start enforcing that. Bottom line, whole world is now serious about data. Personal data, privacy data, sensitive data. So everybody needs to start thinking about it. Everybody needs to know what the risks are and what needs to be done about it, because even if the organizations are operating in India, it's just a global ecosystem. There are always customers or partners or supply chain working across the globe, and it's never an exception. It's not knowing or not knowing the boundaries, not knowing the limits, not knowing the repercussions is not a reason not to be bothered about data privacy. Recently, Middle East also have, they've gotten very stringent on data privacy regulations, because their business is heavily dependent on Western world. So they are in fact doing a lot of work in the data privacy space. That's just to give you a clue of what's happening in India and rest of the world. Many of the Europe and UK and American firms have taken it serious, and they've gotten there in terms of achieving compliance. Rest of the world is now following suit, and they are taking it serious, and there's a lot of work going on right now. Now we did speak about what are the global data privacy regulations. They may vary in certain definitions or aspects or expectations from a data protection point of view, but these are common across the globe, and this is something that everybody needs to worry about, no exceptions. It may be an Indian firm registered somewhere, operating somewhere, servicing customers somewhere else, but these are the de facto standard that everybody needs to follow, and there are no exceptions from it. Breach notification, once again, not many organizations follow that, but then those who have not followed breach notification, it would definitely come back, and there have been challenges faced by organizations by not having a strict breach notification in place. This is nothing but a process to be followed, to be notified in case there is a breach happens. What is the, how do we address it, how do we publicize it, what do we do about it, how long do we have to address it, what are the penalty clauses, all of it clearly documented, approved, published and followed, and evidences of following the same. That's what is breach notification all about. Record keeping, yes, nowadays we receive a lot of privacy notices. That's all a result of record keeping. Even before somebody sends us a marketing material or marketing research report or whatever, they call us and say, can I send you? That's all a result of consents and notifications and SARs. SAR is nothing but subject access request, taking request and getting an approval from somebody before using their personal information. That's an increased expectation, but something that needs to be followed across the globe, no matter which country's citizens' data you are accessing or processing. This is of paramount importance. Data security I will talk about in a little while. Third party risk management and data transfers. Yes, any data that's accessed from an organization by anybody else, and processed in whatsoever manner it is processed, this organization is still responsible. There are no boundaries. As long as you are the collector of data, you are responsible for anything and everything that happens to the data, and that is the recent charge that Facebook faced as well. Their way of doing activity, user activity tracking and selling that information, and they got into trouble because they said that it is the recipient who processed the data, but then they are still in charge of collecting the data, and that does not release them from the obligation. So, third party risk and data transfers is a very critical aspect. Knowing exactly who we are sharing the data with, what nature of data is being shared, sensitivity of the data, and what is happening to it, and do we have sufficient terms and conditions to make sure we are protected and thereby the data is protected. That is very important, and that is a very common aspect of any data privacy regulation across the globe. And the overall life cycle management. Data security and life cycle management is kind of similar, but that deals more with security, and this deals more with the regulations and processing and logistics and quality of the data. And then finally PIA. Annually every organization has to do a privacy impact assessment. It may be a very small 1 week activity, and for a large organization it may be a 6 to 8 weeks of activity. But doing that is very, very important in order to prove that we take our data privacy serious, no matter what the results of the assessment are, no matter what the risks highlighted by the assessment are. Doing it is very important. That is the first step towards showcasing to the rest of the world, to your consumers, to your investments and your regulators, that you do take your data privacy serious, and that is a very common aspect across all these data privacy regulations. And common issues that I personally come across when we speak to customers is, this list is very important. This is not technology, this is just process and common sense and common awareness, but something that everybody has to take a note of. First and foremost is not staying updated on privacy regulations. It's very important to know where you are operating, where all your customers are based, and what the respective countries data privacy regulations are. What do they demand, what are the penalty clauses, what is the notification clauses, what is the time that you get in case there is somebody raises a breach concern. How long do you have to respond, what is the process to respond, is it a telephonic communication, which lawyers are you supposed to employ. Knowing all of this information is very, very important, which is still not the case with many CXOs. So, I would say that's something that needs to be taken care seriously. And the common myth that there's still a lot of myths around what data privacy law is, where it applies and who it doesn't apply, and if I have only 10 UK nationals, I don't have to worry about their data. There are still a lot of myths around it. Getting clarity on those assumptions is also very important, which is still a very common issue that we face across the organization. And once again, any website that we access, there is this huge terms and conditions and privacy notice that's displayed. We just click on agree and then we move on. As a consumer, you can click on agree and move on, but every CXO, I would say, should exactly know what their website's privacy notice talks about, because you are directly responsible and liable to what that privacy notice says. What is it that you are committing to your consumers? What is it that your promise to your consumers is? That is what the terms and condition and privacy notice says, and many of us just approve it. We don't really read it line by line. It's very important to know exactly what your organization's commitment to consumers is, especially the web and retail users is, and making sure that it's refreshed and updated on a regular basis. What the privacy notice applicable last year is not applicable this year. So, definitely be in control of your privacy notice, which is once again a common issue that we see. Employee training, definitely. I'm sure all of us are investing, and that will be a continuous effort. Phishing emails, even today, about 7 or 8% employees still click on it. The number may be coming down from 70 double digits to single digits, but there are still those employees who still click on those phishing emails, and one wrong click for an actual phishing attack is sufficient to trigger a ransomware attack. So, employee training is something that needs to be constantly looked at. Bring down the percentages to less than 1 when you are doing phishing campaigns. The number of employees who still click on those emails should be less than 1%. That's a good state to be in. Breach plan I already talked about. There's no shortcut to this. but a way of monitoring open source code usage, a way of monitoring your GitHub accesses and GitHub posts and data that's going out and coming in, that can be a significant source of vulnerabilities and malwares, the open source community. And with the current way of DevOps and DevSecOps and Azure and Google and Amazon platforms, all of them offering DevOps, GitHub, and it's difficult, but implementing the right kind of technologies which can give control on what's happening in your DevOps platforms is very, very important, and that has caused significant damages to many organizations. One critical example is Equifax, who are still paying billions of dollars in fines. It all happened because of a DevOps platform and open source code usage or equivalent. So that's still a significant challenge for data privacy, because what source code is also IP information. Source code could be your customer's data or your data. It needs to be protected, and source code can give access to database which will hold sensitive information. So that's very important as well. And some of the others, no rocket science, but having common approach is very important. I will talk about the next slide quickly. This is something that I recommend in terms of how to go about it, and this is not a one-time activity, something that needs to be done every year. Quick look at where your sensitive data is, make a repository, constantly monitor what's happening, and do not limit it to a particular sector of the organization or a data center or on premise. There's a lot of data going on to the cloud, so please also monitor what's happening on the cloud, and then create a list of risks and go about putting in controls to fix those risks. And your risks can vary or originate based on where the data is. Endpoints can be, your desktops can be a data leakage point, mobile devices can be a data leakage point, DevOps, cloud DevOps can be a point of data leakage, your databases, big data platforms, analytics platforms, where you have customer information but in a non-testing environment. There are various ways in which a data leakage attack can happen. At least knowing where the data is very important, and then a point 2 is reduce as much data as possible. If you don't need it, don't keep it, and then follow the hygiene principles of taking notifications, data breach plans, implementing the right controls, refreshing the controls on a regular basis, because again I come across enterprises where DLP is implemented, but it was done 10 years ago, but is it still doing the job? It is not, because the IT estate has progressed, IT estate has expanded, but your DLP is still using the same policies and rules of 10 years ago. So you are definitely not protected. You may still be paying millions of dollars to the vendor, but you are not protected because it's not implemented right. So right technology implementation is again an important aspect. All of this has to be an annual activity. Like I said, it may take a week for some organizations, couple of weeks for other organizations, but all of this proves that you are serious about data privacy and data protection, and that's very important step. This is how to go about that couple of weeks of exercise that I was talking about. But the last slide I wanted to talk about is what next. We've talked about traditional data privacy technologies. They are all about encrypting data, protecting data, data in transmission, data in usage, loss prevention, but that's all still the protection for the past data or protection technologies for the past. What's going to happen in future is 65% of world's population is going to have their data digitized. That means the regulators are going to come down more heavily moving forwards, and almost every organization will come under data privacy scrutinization sooner or later. By 25, everybody will be will be asked to demonstrate how their data governance framework is implemented, protected, what are the proofs and evidences. That means the future, and also with so much of AI, ML and automation and machine learning, it's difficult to control the usage of data, and it's difficult to control the kind of biases that are introduced by the data processing, biases that are introduced by your analytics and machine learning. And so the future of data protection for the coming years is all going to be PETs, privacy enhancing technologies. It's a new term that starts with Gartner, but now it's being used by everybody. But the terminology is new, but the science behind it is not really new. It's the same as what we did for the last 10 years, identifying and protecting your data. But the ways that we do it is going to change because the way the data is used and processed has changed now. It's all on the cloud, it's on your mobile devices, it's everywhere, there is hyper automation, hyper personalization. So, traditional ways of leak prevention and encryption are not going to be sufficient, and these are some of the new technologies to look out for. Some of them are already in a very matured state, and some of them we have niche boutique vendors who are offering those technologies. Some of them are still in POC, not tested on large sets of data, but this is something that's going to become the future, definitely the future of sensitive data processing, PECs or PETs that we call them. Right time to start investing, exploring, doing COEs to figure out which of these suits the nature and size of the data that you process. So, that's the leaving thought, things to worry about on this side, things to start exploring on this side. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Okay, we'll take one quick question.
Priya, thank you for this thing. But one thing little off track might be, we are talking about mostly the enterprise data security. So any thought from the end user point of view, say for example, I am using an app or using certain websites from my laptop or computer. So how to protect my data, and also that data or that breach or anything doesn't flow into the enterprise network?
Security and DLP technologies, that would still be the way of doing it, but then DLP has also, and another thing is DLP alone doesn't help. The right configuration of DLP, because from endpoint earlier the only ways for data to leak was probably a USB or an email, but now you have WhatsApp web, you have all social media channels where data can be uploaded, in innumerable number of emails where sensitive data can be attached. Endpoint DLP still very much is the solution clubbed with EDR, but implementing the right policies and making sure they are all doing the right rules and triggers and alerts is very important, but that would still help.
Thank
and
you.
There are similar extensions to your mobile devices, the mobile apps that we use.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone.